Assalamualaikum and very good morning to all of the viewers. So as been planned for today, we're gonna have the online essay session. So on the title of the development of Malaysian architecture. So it's a bit important topic, which is from this perhaps you can understand more about the development of architectural language in our country. So starting from the traditional period toward what happened in the current contemporary architecture in our country. I would like to show this image. So maybe you have learned that in architectural history classes. So as you can see here, this is what we can call as a grid order. So we can found that this grid order has been applied in most of the classical buildings lah, in the Europe. But I believe that maybe we can see this particular grid order applied in our country. So as you can see that in this image from the left, that is the Doric order. So followed by the middle Iconic order, and the right one is the Corinthian order. So maybe you wondering why I show this image to you guys in this Malaysian architectural development. So let's see, this is a few of the example in the common terrace house scheme in Malaysia. So as you can see here, so in this image, so they do some part of the renovation in the facade frontal area of the house. So as you can see, in this particular part, in the middle part of the houses, so they applied what I can say that the grid order on the column. So as you can see in this part, and as you can see in this part, so even though that we are living in Malaysia, so and then our traditional architecture is heavily representing by the form of the Malay traditional house, but why this particular thing happen? Why they still adopt the language from the foreign country in our very own house? So this is will be triggering the question, and even me somehow wondering why people still apply that into their particular house. So actually it's somehow related to the topic that we're going to discuss for today, which is the identity of Malaysian architecture. Because if we talk in the perspective of the identity, so what is the thing that's supposed to be represent in our design that can be represent the identity of our Malaysian architecture? So based on the image that I showed to you just now, so even though that we talk much about the good things about Malay traditional architecture, so but people still trying to adapt and trying to replicate the component or the language from foreign country, so and then they adapt into their house. So what happened? So this is the thing that we can discuss for today. Okay, so before we go further, so we have to going back to the root of our architecture in our country, which is Malay traditional architecture. So this is the architecture style that thought to be have exist since 14th century in Malay Peninsula, and then it grew rapidly towards the beginning of 16th century. So in line with the rapid development of the city of Melaka. So starting by the 14th century, so it's have classified to be found the monument of the Malay traditional architecture. Okay, so but if we refer back, because if we talk about the Malay traditional architecture, so a lot of the researchers have done studies and research on this particular building or this particular architecture language. Okay, so and then Malay traditional architecture, as we know, that is created by our previous generation, our ancestors, in accordance with the socio-economic condition, culture, and also the environmental needs at that time. So it's not something like what we have today. So if we reflect back to the image that I showed to you just now, so which is it's not because of the needs. It's why the owner of the house renovate their house on that way. So for me, it's not because of the needs. So maybe it's because of the social status. I don't know. So maybe they want to show that. So I'm rich. So that's why I have to use the Greek order, the Doric column in front of my house. So but if we see back in the Malay traditional architecture perspective, so the people during that time, so they just simply build their house according to the needs, which is the needs of the environmental needs. So that's why because Malaysia, we know that we have a lot of the trees, and then that's why the material of our building during that time is by using the timber. So and then even the culture. So why the house is elevated on steel? So there are some sort of the philosophical behind that. So which is some said that is because the people during that time is respecting the land. So they don't want to, how to say that, the permanent ties in between house and land. So that's why they just build on top of the land by using steel, and it's elevated. And then on top of that, we know that our country have having a series of the flood throughout the year. So that's why they designed the elevated. So on top of that is to respect, as we know that we have some sort of the animal like tiger and whatnot. So maybe it's part of the security aspect. So there's a lot of the debate, a lot of the philosophical discussion why it's been designed like that. So and then Malay traditional architecture is, we can call that as a manifestation of Malay people thinking at that time. So why they construct that way is because that's the way of their life. So and then so by using by reflecting to the Malay traditional architecture, so it can be classified as a reflecting the wisdom and creativity and aesthetic value of traditional Malay society at that time. So if we see in detail, so every single aspect of Malay traditional architecture is have their own meaning, have their own reason, and have their own justification. Okay, so this is an example of one of Malay traditional architecture house. So this is if we look at the form of the roof, so we can easily classify that as a rumah negeri sembilan. So as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, so this is the part of the elevated house, and then this is steel, and then this is ground. So the house itself is not permanently tied to the ground, to the land. So that's why maybe even when we do the geometric assessment in the previous semester, so you know that all of those houses are being moved from their original site to that particular site. Why? Because it's not permanently tied to the land or to the ground. It's not like the architecture that we seen today. So which is, you have the foundation, and then you have to do the foundation inside the land, underground. So compared to the Malay traditional architecture, so you don't have to do that kind of foundation. So it can be simply anyway, any land. So based on the steel, and then sit on the ground. Okay, so and then this is an example of rumah Pahang. So again, the same characteristic. So the same scale, and then the same elevated, and then it sit on the ground on the land. Okay, and then so this is how to say that this is the characteristic of the kampung, the layout of the kampung. So as you can see in this image, so compared to the housing scheme that we have today, so which is most of them are arranged in the grid layout or grid system. Not to say system lah, but in the grid manners, in the grid layout. So compared to the layout of the kampung, as you can see here, so the way that the building been arranged is a bit random. So it's not rigid in the grid layout. So and then by looking at this scheme, so as you can see that, so we can see that we can predict that the airflow will be freely going through to all of the buildings in this particular planning, in this particular planning, compared to the as what we have today. So common rigid grid layout. So as you know that we're gonna have that the series of the terrace house or the series of clusters house or assembly house, but most of them are being arranged in the rigid and in the grid system. So which is they don't care about the airflow, they don't care about the sunlight, they don't care about the sun orientation. So compared to what happened in the past, so all of those things are take it into consideration. So as you can see, the arrangement here, so maybe this part of the area will be get the wind, if the wind coming from here. So and then so maybe we can say that yeah, during that time, so they don't have any land restriction and whatnot. So but that's the thing, that is what we call as a development lah. So that's the thing that we lose. So because for example, if you stay in the city, so somehow you have to you have to buy the house that being designed in the such a grid planning system. Okay. So this is the the illustration of the Istana Besar, so the palace. This is illustration done by Faizal Rahmat. So you can see that the monumental, so the richness of the language and characteristic in this particular image. So if we compare that the palace to the common house, so there will be such a gap in between the form. And then this is from the side view. So this is complex of traditional building. So even though that we say that we might have the limitation in a way to construct the timber building, but as you can see in the past, even though this is the illustration, so it might be right or it might be wrong. Okay, so but somehow we can predict and imagine this is such a monumental scale of the buildings that have in the past by replicating, by adapting the Malay traditional architecture values. So this is from another angle. So this is as you can see, the front part of the image, this is the form of the mosque that you can easily find in Malacca. So it's a bit become the language of Malacca traditional mosque. So because they had the influence from multicultural and from the foreign country, because as we know that Malacca is a bit one of the pusat perdagangan in the historic time. Okay, so this is another views, the Malacca city, again illustrated by Faizal Rahmat. So as you can see, it is a port which is for the tradings, and then the city behind that, and then there are a lot of the activities have been recorded during that time in Melaka. Okay, so previously you see that such a very Nusantara kind of language and very Malay traditional architecture kind of language in this particular building in Malacca. So what happened? As you can see in this image, so on the left side, this is Efamosa. Okay, so I believe that all of you guys are familiar with this kind of with this building. So if you've been in the Melaka, so this is what we can call as the development of architecture. So previously I showed to you a few of the example of Malay architecture buildings and a few of the example illustration of Malay architecture palace. So and then now we can see that this is in Melaka. So from here to here is a bit such a contrast. So this is what happened in our country. So because we've been colonized by the colonial lah. So this is the thing that we call as a colonial architecture. So this on the left part, so this is heavily influenced by the Portuguese. On the right side is heavily influenced by the Dutch. Okay, so again, so this is another example. So as you can see in this image, this is the railway station Kuala Lumpur. So why is not been constructed by using the Malay traditional architecture language? Why it have to be designed by adapting the influence from foreign language? So you can see that it is totally entirely different, entirely contrast to what we see from Malay traditional architecture. So this is another views of the Kuala Lumpur railway station. So this is another building. So maybe you cannot identify this building yet, but this is actually the bangunan Sultan Abdul Samad in front of the Dataran Merdeka. So this is the photos taken in the historical time lah. Okay, so maybe today we can see somehow the color scheme is quite different compared to the original maybe. So after they do the some part of the restoration works, so again in front of the Dataran Merdeka. So Dataran Merdeka, right? So why is they are not using the Malay traditional architecture style? So this is the style that we can call as a British Raj style. So and then it's heavily adapt the principle of Gothic architecture. So as you can see on the strong vertical line, and then it's also heavily influenced from the India and Middle East building. So if you can see on those decorative features on this building, so why not they are using the Malay traditional architecture? So that's happened throughout the development of architecture in our country. So to conclude that, so the evolution of Malaysian architecture, so we can classify that into two periods, which is the before independence and after independence. Okay, so before independence, so when there is the colonization, because if we read through the history, so because we've been colonized in the series of events, so starting by the Portuguese, British, and Japan and whatnot. So all of those events somehow affecting the development of our architecture in Malaysia. So before independence, so we can say that the major application and adaptation of foreign architecture style. So and then because of this adaptation to the foreign architecture style, so most of the Malay traditional architecture are being isolated in the village. So on the city, for example, as we see just now in the Kuala Lumpur and Melaka, so most of the building are designed by heavily adapting from the foreign architecture style. So and then what happened after the independence? So that's the bond of the early generation architects in Malaysia, which is most of them are graduated in the foreign architecture institution. So when they graduated from foreign architecture institution, so they will apply that what they learn in the foreign institution into the Malaysian architecture development. So what to do, because definitely in Malaysia during that time we don't have any architecture school that established yet during that time. So most of the early architects during that time is graduating from foreign institution. So what they have learned in that particular institution, in that particular country, so it will be have strong tendency for them to apply that in the Malaysian architecture development. Okay, so that's why Malaysia is a bit rich country. So because we have a lot of the influence, even our Malay traditional architecture also have their own influence from our neighbour country. So if we go to the northern part, so there are some influence from the northern part of the country. If we go to the eastern part, so there are such influence from the neighbourhood country that on the east side of the Malaysia.